Hello, everyone, and welcome to this session called The Basic Legal Requirements Your Company Should Have. Peter Weiss from Simons Muirhead Burton, SMB. Here's Peter joining us in the session. Let's just wait. Hi,
Hello,
Peter.
everyone.
Hello. All right, so everyone, here is Peter, and I'm going to leave it to Peter now to take over to present the session, and I'll see everyone in a bit for the Q&A.
Great. Thank you very much. Look forward to seeing you soon. So, hi, everyone. I'm guessing you're all here because in different ways you are starting up or running your own business and looking for some legal guidance and suggestions going forward. So what I'm here to do is tell you a little bit about myself, my firm, and just to encourage you along the way. I think that it's worth noting that probably all of you are quite brave, you're innovative, and you're probably fairly independent. And so you're just looking for some guidance as to what you need to do next. So if you give me a few minutes, I'll run through some basics about questions and information you might need to know about, and then we'll lead to questions at the end. So I'm going to share my screen now and share a presentation with you that hopefully will cover most of these points. So hopefully you can all see this. This is me and talking about the startup and breakdown event. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about our firm. We're a firm that was founded 50 years ago as a criminal law firm. We were well known for advising on civil liberties and rights, but we're now a full service law firm that does media, technology, corporate, commercial work, and works with a lot of different areas of the law and lots of different types of clients. We're ranked as one of a leading firm in more areas firm of our size than any other firm in the country, and we are known in the Legal 500 and Chambers, which are some of the main legal directories. One of the things that differentiates us is that we're proud of just being different. We're very entrepreneurial. We like working with startups and developing businesses, helping individuals and business owners, but we help them get up, grow until they're much larger businesses and even international companies. The areas that you might need help with when you're...
Hi, Bert. So sorry to interrupt. No one can see your presentation, actually. Would you be able to share?
I have clicked share, but it's just spinning. So let me try it again.
No problem.
Do you want to try and post? It's just, sorry, this is really embarrassing. It's just circling and circling on my screen. Okay, so I'm unsure. So let me cancel and try again. That's very...
All good.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
It seems to be when I'm going for share screen, it's not letting me do moments. So give me just a moment.
Okay.
Do you have the presentation there that you want to post up, or do you want me to just...
I'm going to try and see if I can bring it on. 1 second.
And I'll try it one more time as well, but I'm unclear why it's...
1 second. Let's... graphics. I do have to find it as well. I know I put it somewhere. Here we go.
Okay.
1 second. Sorry, Peter. I have
It's
to
all right.
actually grab it. Sorry, everyone. Stay with us.
I'm sorry. I don't know.
This happens at virtual events. It's absolutely fine.
Not the presentation.
Not a problem. Let's see. Let me just grab it on my screen. Speakers, we've got...
Hang on, I think I can do it now. Let me give you one more go.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think so.
Does that work?
Does that come up?
Yes, it does.
Great. Okay, sorry, everybody.
All good.
Great. All right, so these are the areas that you might need. Here's the slide you didn't see. Here's the slide you didn't see. Not too exciting. It's everything I've just told you. So good experience, a startup, and doing what I do. You have to stay calm under pressure because there's always going to be a solution. So here we go. We've got some practice areas which you might need. These are just different areas that you might see when you're looking for law firms or advice. This isn't everything we do, but it's things that might relate to stuff that you need. This is a little bit about me, which I won't go on about in any great deal, but other than to say that I'm a corporate finance lawyer and I work with a lot of media and tech clients. I do a lot of stuff with the US and I'm very active in corporate social responsibility, working with charities and social enterprises and helping them grow. I've worked in the past with the Prince's Trust, where they did early stage funding, and with a number of other startups that work with giving advice and mentoring to people that want to grow their businesses. So here we are, presentation. So getting started, how do you prepare? So as a founder, you're going to be thinking between sort of how do you make the right decision? And one of the key things you're going to be thinking about is, what's worth hiring somebody for and what's worth doing myself in terms of what can I save money on and what should I be spending money? And it's really important to make those decisions wisely. I think that, like an electrician knows what they're doing in terms of electric wires. I think it's equal to say that there are certain situations where a lawyer would be like an electrician, and certain types of stuff you shouldn't try to do yourself, just like you wouldn't try to do your own electrics. So a lot of times people try copying and lifting and taking precedents from places to save money. And actually, if it doesn't work out, agreements and things you do don't necessarily make sense. So I'll come on to it later, but I think it's really important to use the right judgment as you're starting out between developing things on your own and figuring out how to save costs in terms of when you need to get advice and when you don't. And I would encourage you to be as independent as you can and as many resources as you can, but recognize your own limitations in terms of what you can and can't do when you're setting things up. It's really important when you're starting out your plan to keep things very simple. And people joke about it, but you should be able to draw a picture of the way you're structured, the way you're set up, the way you relate to your customers, and what your plan is for your business. And I think as long as you can explain it clearly, that'll be something you'll be necessary to do to your employees and to your investors and everyone else. So the second message, keep it simple. And the third is do it right, which is get people that can actually promise and deliver. So you want to get people that a lot of people will talk about what they can do, but you should get some time, like with any situation, building a relationship with the people you're going to be working with, because they're really critical to your plans. There's one of the examples I often give about issues that founders have in terms of these choices and things that they're doing, before I come on to the common issues for founders, is they're always rushing because they have very little time. They do everything themselves, and they are trying to figure out how to get the best results with the least amount of money as possible. And I've used the example sometimes of somebody saying to a builder, I need a garage, just build me a garage, I need to put somewhere for my car. And the builder just doesn't get a chance to ask any questions. They're told, build the garage as quick as they can, and they stick the garage on the piece of land that the person's asked them to do it for. The consequences then, the person comes along later and says, can you build my house now? And you say, but your garage is sticking right in the middle of where your house is. And that sounds like a strange analogy, but what it's saying is that when you're requesting someone to do something in a rush and you're scrambling, it's really important that you give them a whole picture for what they need to do. You help work with them to help understand what you want, and let them guide you as to where you want the garage and where you want everything set up, because otherwise you'll end up spending a lot of money doing something and having to undo it later. So even though you may be cost conscious, try to ask wide questions and get people that understand the big picture of what you're aiming to do so they can help you do it in order. When you set up, one of the founders of a company usually get shares in the company. And there's a number of different principles for shares. You own shares, which give you a sense of ownership in the company, depending on what you have. Vesting means whether you have a right to own shares straight away or not. And exit is about when you could be forced to sell your shares. So if you're the founder or founders, it's really important to understand what each of you are contributing, what shares in the business you're getting, and then what shares you want to offer to outside people. One of the big mistakes that lots of founders do is they get excited and get lots of people involved, and they give away loads of equity without actually really understanding what it means. And while it's easy to give away equity, it's very difficult to get it back. It's then important for you to build a plan, to have a timeline for how you want to achieve things. So people always feel like they want money next week or something in a month. And I think it's really important, like with any project or building a house, that you plan it properly, you get clear on your objectives, and you get clear on the scale and timing for how you want to grow. I know all of these don't sound specifically like legal requirements, but in order to get a good legal brief and get the right advice and make the right plans, you need to go through these practical steps. The next sort of thing you're going to be looking for is to get investors, and that can be from friends and family. It could be from angel investors, or it could be from funds like those that may be funding you, or venture capital or private equity. And it's important before you start going out and looking to all of these things that you do some research into all of them and understand the kind of money that you want, what strings come attached with it, and how you want to get invested in your business. The next thing to look at is due diligence, and what is due diligence and why is it important to do it. Due diligence basically is sort of an investigation. If you were going to the doctor would do a physical and they would look at you and they would check out where you're strong, where you're weak, what your ailments are, and they would give you a full analysis of your health and any vitamins you need to take, what you need to do, how you need to look after yourself. Due diligence for a business or a company is where you scrutinize the business and you decide. It's often done by investors or buyers who want to see whether or not the business is strong enough and whether it's worth investing. But the first starting point for you is that it's important that you do due diligence into your own business before you go into getting other people involved and doing due diligence onto you. The three kind of key areas that are often relevant for startups are people, because you want to make sure you get the right people. You want to be clear how you're engaging them, whether they're your employees, whether they're consultants, or whether they're just volunteers. And you need to make sure that you've got the people, you've engaged with them on the right terms, and everybody's clear on the basis of how you're working. And if necessary, you have the right contracts. The other key asset and thing that's often due diligence in a startup or developing company is the IP, which is the know-how, the brands, the idea you developed, what's unique about it, and also things to do with GDPR, which is data protection. If you're going to be gathering customer data about general consumers, it's important for you to have comply with data protection laws, because one of the most valuable sets of growing businesses, particularly online ones, can be their customer base. But if you don't gather the data correctly, then all of it can't be used and you can in fact be liable for fines. So it's important that you get your data and your IP sorted out at the early stage. And the next thing is contracts, to make sure you spend the money on the right contracts and don't bother spending money where you don't need to. So I've just dropped in a few terms of the types of contracts that generally apply. An NDA is what's called a confidentiality agreement or a non-disclosure agreement, and that's often where you want to share an idea and want someone else to utilize it. An MOU is another word for a heads of terms or a term sheet, which is where you often engage with investors, where you set out the basic terms on which they can invest, the value on which they're investing. And an IA is called an investment agreement, which is if they do decide to invest, they enter into a full-form investment agreement. And T's and C's are terms and conditions, which is if you have an online business, it may be your privacy policy, your terms and conditions, or whatever else you need. These are the kind of critical things you'd be thinking about as a startup. So I think I've gone backwards in my slide. So what's next? The founders need to do some homework to get ready before they kind of go out to look for money and they go on to the next stage and they're growing their business. They need to do some preparation and they need to prepare a deck, and you should get someone with some design experience to help you create a deck, which is essentially a pitch deck, which helps show about your business, the key members of the team, and what you're looking to do. And the best idea is to make it simple so anybody can understand it. You want to create a cap table, which shows the number of shares you and any other founders are holding and what you're giving to investors. And you want to create a budget and business plan. In addition, you want to engage the right team. So you want to find the right people to join your team. You want to look for the right kind of backers or mentors or advisors to support you, and the right advisors, be that lawyers or accountants, whoever else you need. And then the next step is to test the water. So as much as you can, once you've created your deck and your business plan and your table, it's a good idea to get advice from people, which you can often get free advice and feedback, get that from mentors. And an NED is a non-executive director, so someone who's been in the business before or is a bit wiser, or who can look over your plans and pick holes in them. So one of the things that often happens with me is that people come to me and they think presented a great idea, and I'll say to them, what's the barrier to entry? Why can't someone else just do this? And they realize actually their idea might be really good, but once they start it, 1,000 other people can do it. And sometimes having people that have been in a business before can share those kinds of thoughts with you. So you're now ready to go. You've got your business plan, your project, you've got your team, you've thought about stuff with your founders. These are some other things that you need to think about before you sort of get going. The structure of the company that you're going to be using. That means whether you use a company, an LLP, you're going to be a for-profit company or a not-for-profit company, whether you need a shareholders agreement between you as founders and potentially your investors, and the standard articles of association which the companies form with, whether those need to be changed to deal with any specific rights relating to you as setting up as a company. It's a good idea to get an accountant on board at an early stage to give you some guidance on the way you're structuring. And then they can also tell you about SEIS or EIS, which are forms of tax favorable where investors get an incentive to invest in you. EMI, which is an employee share option scheme, and other support that they may be able to provide for you as you're growing. And tax is fundamental to understanding how you set up both legally and tax work hand in hand. And then making sure you get your team clearly tied up with you and engaging them correctly on the right contracts, figuring out things that motivate them, because it may not just be the work, it may be part having shares, it may be the employment contracts, it may be the environment or the cause that you're involved with, and setting clear targets so everybody knows what they're working towards. I think once you've done all of that, you're sort of laying the platform for getting ready to go with the business. And then you've got the basic legal and structure in place. You've chosen your company. You've identified the basic area your business are. You've done your due diligence to work out what you think your value is. You've had it tested with somebody else. And then at that stage, you're just ready to go and start out in the real world with real investors and real money in and responsibility to actually prove and demonstrate your business can grow. I think that hopefully in a nutshell provides a synopsis of the key issues that I wanted to address. So I will stop sharing my screen if that's okay, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has.
Hello, Peter. Thank you so much. Fantastic. We got it working in the end, which was good.
Yeah, so I'm sorry about that.
No, it is all good. And now is your time, everyone, to ask Peter any questions that you might have. That was definitely a fantastic session, really starting from the foundations of what you need to have and what you need to know in order to legally for your company to start. So we do have a few questions coming in the chat. So the first one is from Martin. He's asked, do you provide help with website terms and condition privacy policies?
As me and our firm, yes, of course. So yes, we provide help with website terms, conditions, and policies. And yes, of course. And then I think also goes to, as I mentioned before, there's also equally important is to get your data protection and data protection registration in place so that you're gathering data. So contracts are great, but you just need to make sure they reflect the kind of business that you're actually dealing with. So I think that you can't have one size fits all. So I have a client that's working on publishing opinions on their website. And so they were thinking about using a set of standard terms and conditions, but actually there's a lot more sensitivity if you're going to have to be editing what people are saying about each other on a website, and you're a bit like a publisher, and that type of terms and conditions may not work for someone else that's just buying and selling products. Yes, the answer is yes, we do. And yes, that's an area where we can help.
Fantastic. And our second question is from Jacob. He's saying, what stops someone from posting an idea or information anonymously whilst they are under an NDA? Say potentially through use of a VPN. What I understand is that the VPN provider would also be subject to data protection laws.
Sure. I mean, I think you're the kind of, I won't get into the legal answer about the kind of consequences. I think that you generally be approaching people with a confidentiality agreement with people that you trust and respect. I think that the confidentiality agreement is good as the person you're dealing with. So if you had a great idea for a new drink and you went to Coca-Cola, they may say, well, we don't even want to sign an NDA because we want to take the chance of you telling us something that's something we're already developing. So they may not even enter into the agreement because they don't want to give you the benefit that you might have come up with a new product that they have come up with already, and then they would be taking the credit. I think equally, if you're ending to say you come upon an investor who seems slightly murky to you, but say as saying they have loads of money, and you say, well, I'd like to share my idea with you, but you need to sign an NDA. If they're not very reputable or they don't have any money really, you breach the confidentiality agreement and you have to sue them, you're not going to have anything to recover against. So I think that it's important. The confidentiality agreement is basically, its strength is that it helps people focus their minds on the consequences of breaching it. And you can't necessarily protect an idea, but you can protect a business concept. And it's something that needs a bit more guidance and advice around the specifics about what you're doing. But I think the starting point before answering how do you enforce against it is making sure you get in the right relationship in the place with who you sign up to, not just giving an NDA to anyone just because they want to hear about your idea, but being fairly discerning in terms of who you share your ideas with.
Got it. Thank you very much for that. Third question from Mary is, what stage of business or is it necessary to register for ICO?
Right. I think again, it's not a it's not a question
General.
I can. Yeah, I think in a way it depends on what your business and depends what your the timing for when it's right to do that. So it's not something I can specifically answer. As much as you can do yourself at an early stage to register where you can.
Okay. We have a question from Adiam. Are there organizations or charities you can recommend that give free legal advice to startups?
I think there's a lot of different. So I would say, if you look online, there's probably some very good articles. I'm actually going to be writing an article myself as well for startups and how to be a good client and how to get going. So I'll maybe I can share that with the group afterwards. I think that there are some bigger law firms that operate out of US and other places that sometimes do starter packs for early stage businesses that give them some guidance. And I think online there's a lot of good articles and content about things that you can do. You can look at Companies House, has a really good has good guidance on how to set up companies and what you know. And I think a lot of accountants' websites have a lot of good information on things. So I think that you can work out a lot of the basic information. And I think there's a lot of businesses, including ours, that if we like the idea of what someone's doing, we'll invest some free time at the beginning to give some free advice, to give some free guidance, to assess whether we think we're an investor in a way, because we're deciding if we want to invest our time in the project. So we'll look into it. So I think when I was saying earlier, it's really good to look around and try to get as much information as you can, and then work out who you like the look of, to approach them and say, would you be willing to help me? Because a lot of people will give you an hour of free time to just hear what you have to say, or they'll ask you to send the deck first to see whether they think it's a viable one, and then they'd be prepared to meet with you and with you further. So that's something that we do, and I'm sure other people do as well.
Great advice. Thank you for that. And a question from Madalena. How much should you pay for an NDA, making sure it is legally binding?
I can't answer that question. You can do an NDA for a fairly inexpensive amount, and it should be a very, very straightforward thing. And if you develop a good relationship with a firm, they may give it to you very inexpensively so that you can just use it while you're marketing your idea. But it's important that you use the right NDAs, because I've seen people lift them off the internet and use like an NDA from the US and the UK, and or use one that says governed by UK law when there is no such thing as UK law. It's actually English law. So people, that's where I was trying to say before, really important that you find a balance between where it's worth spending the money on just getting the simple stuff right, versus trying to just lift stuff from somewhere else. So I can't give you a specific price, but it depends how complicated, but it could be very, very relatively inexpensive to get a good NDA in place. But you should, again, that's exactly the kind of question that you need to be raising with someone, not just to say to them, how much is it going to cost me to do an NDA because I only have enough money for that, but to go in and say, here's what my plan is. This is what I'd like to be doing. I think I need an NDA, but could you tell me what you need? So that's the balance I'm trying to say between when you're getting advice, between just asking, because you don't worry about price, worry about outcomes. And so you should be asking the right questions at the early stage rather than focusing on how much things cost.
Brilliant. And our last question before we end the session, Reader, is from Kay. Is there a certain percent, for example, 20%, of changes required in order to avoid patent claims? Or do you have to completely change the fundamentals of the design to be legally safe?
So again, complicated than my limited experience can tell you, but patents is a very, very specific area of the law, and patents have special patent attorneys that can advise on patents. So I would recommend you to one, and it has to have very, very unique proprietary qualities to make it capable of being patented. Otherwise, you won't get a patent. So if you just think, well, I'm going to invent a new Ziploc bag that's a bit better, you're going to have to go a bit further than that, and you're going to have to demonstrate a unique quality and go through a patent attorney who deal with everything from scientific developments to technological developments. So I think you should really understand the technology of whatever you're thinking about patenting before you spend too much energy getting involved with it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for the question, Kay. And thank you, everyone. Thank you, Peter, joining us today in this session. And for those of you who would like to continue the conversation with Peter, make sure to jump into the lounge after this. And hopefully you'll be able to grab a chair and ask him any other questions you might have, or just make contact. And of course, we've shared his details on LinkedIn and also of his firm in the chat. So please take that away if you want to make a connection with him after this event. So take care, everyone. We'll see you at the next session. And thank you again, Peter.
Thank you very much. Good luck, everyone. Take care.